Welcome to Real Estate in Reality. We're your hosts, DT Moore, Daniel in the House McMorris Sr., with our friend and real estate subject matter expert, Greg Knapp. Brought to you by Rain Capital Solutions and in association with the Real Estate Tax Institute and DCD Real Estate Investments. Welcome to another episode of Real Estate in Reality. Your hosts are myself, Dwayne Moore, and Daniel McMorris. We are welcoming you here from metro suburb of Atlanta. And my dear friend, Daniel, you are in Chicagoland. Is that right?
That's correct. Chicago suburbs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to jump right into it. We have some really interesting topic today, which is just dealing specifically with real estate. We're going to cover some economic forces that are going on, the edict from the government that has stopped foreclosures for now, and we're going to talk about a few things with real estate, getting into real estate, and then we're going to chat with the home buyers as well and the homeowners. So let's get started. Daniel, we were chatting earlier offline, and we were talking about what's pending to take place as it stands right now with the Forbearance program that was put in place by our government to put a stay on foreclosures and to give people time. First of all, what's taking place with that, and what is it actually giving them time to do? What is the forbearance for?
Well, basically, the forbearance is for to stay a foreclosure, to keep a person in their home, to keep the foreclosure from actually, displacing many families, especially in the midst of a pandemic. So the government's insight, and I think it was a good one, was to put a moratorium on these particular rents and mortgage payments to keep the foreclosure process and the eviction process from moving forward. Now, nothing can be worse than having a pandemic where COVID-19 is running rampant and you have increased homelessness.
Yes.
So it was incumbent upon them to do something to pretty much stave off this particular financial problem, which was the non-payment of rents and mortgages simply because people could not go to work.
Right.
So this is not them being, lazy, and this is not them being deadbeat or, just irresponsible as far as their bills are concerned. This is a problem that affected everyone.
Yes.
And so it was needful for the government to make this move. But now, as you know, the COVID-19 is kind of coming to an end, and people are going back to work, and bars are opening back up, and restaurants are opening back up. And that means one thing. That means that the foreclosures that are on these particular properties are also going to open back up.
Okay, which means that this forbearance is going to be lifted? Yeah,
the moratorium will be no more, and it just pretty much opens the floodgates for these particular creditors to demand payment.
Now, is that full payment for what the arrears are, or what is that exactly?
Well, now, it could be worked out with your mortgage company as far as that which is in arrears. But basically, those people who were in a status of foreclosure prior to the pandemic will find themselves right back in that same situation. Those people who are on their way to being in foreclosure, which the forbearance pretty much helped them, are going to have to do something to catch up to their mortgage payments. Now, this is a difficult task to do, seeing how the monies are probably not going to be there.
Right.
for these individual families, these individual apartment dwellers, to just come up with all of this back money that's going to be demanded, by their landlords and mortgagers.
Right.
And
Right.
so, what can we do about what's coming down? Because it's going to be madness.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
going to be a situation, that is pretty much unprecedented because of the fact that, all these people at this one time, through no fault of their own, this is not like the mortgage, a few years ago when,
Yeah. Right. The crash,
they,
2008.
right, with these bad mortgages, that was on them.
Yeah.
And they got bailed out. But here it is, the only bailout that people got during this pandemic is this moratorium. I think that they should have been forgiven the debt altogether and
Yes.
given a fresh start once COVID-19 lifts.
Yes. Yes.
However, I'm not the government, but then again, if they had some benevolence, they should look at doing that other than, allowing these mortgage companies to come back and just pillage the village, so to speak.
Right. I'm sure the homeowners would have sided with that as opposed to taking a stimulus check.
True. We needed those stimulus checks, in this particular situation, not only just to keep our family unit functioning, but see, these payments, if they went directly to our landlords and to our mortgage company, we still would have found ourselves short of finances to do things like eat,
Absolutely.
which is kind of important.
Yeah, that's kind of important. That's important. Lights and gas are important too.
All these things.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Cut my lights off, cut my water off, and then demand that I wash my hands?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
All these things are, some of it is common sense, but then again, you can see, how we can just run into wickedness sometimes and just
Yeah, absolutely.
people who don't care.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
So they're sadly speaking, but we are the show is real estate in reality, and as you and I have discussed before, we would prefer speaking the reality as opposed to just giving hope. We offer hope and solutions as well, but we want to speak the truth in love, with compassion, but the truth nevertheless. And there are going to be some folks that are going to go into foreclosure. There's going to be a glutton of those going into foreclosure that won't be able to be stopped. At least that's how it will look from the onset. We know every case and situation can be different, so it's not completely hopeless. However, there are things that people should know, steps they should take up front, particularly if they know, if they like you mentioned, if you haven't started talking to your mortgage companies, folks, you need to do that. You need to call them and see what can be negotiated, because all this is going to do is give you more time. You know what their objectives are, if they're going to work with you or if they're not going to work with you. And that way you can listen to some of the strategies that we'll kind of talk about here. And that way you can start to plan from that perspective, because there's nothing like knowing ahead of time to be able to plan ahead of time. So, what is it, Daniel, that let's just talk to folks that let's talk first to the folks that have a mortgage, their homes are not paid off, they were in forbearance, and they know that with the moratorium being lifted, they will not have the capital to catch up with what they've fallen behind with the mortgage. What are some of the steps they should be looking at, or things they should look to do, starting off with?
Number one, the first step, don't move. Don't give up your property.
Okay, don't move out of your house. Okay.
Don't move out of your house. Don't move. Number two, you have up until the date of sale before pretty much all bets are off in terms of saving your property.
Okay.
Up
How do
until
you
the
do
date
that?
of sale. So let's say, for instance, you get a notice from your mortgager that the property is going up for auction or for sale because of a foreclosure. So this foreclosure will take place, and the sheriff's sale date is set for September of 2021. So you have until September of 2021 to come up with a solution. The real solution, the most practical solution, would be to pay the monies that you owe. But if that's not possible, we need a different strategy.
Right.
We need a strategy whereby how can I keep my home? How can I, basically save my credit as well? Because that's the double whammy that happens to us in a mortgage foreclosure. We lose credibility, our credit score plummeted, and then we lose the home as well.
Right.
So,
Right.
so there are some strategies, that we use here at Rain Capital Solution, like deed in lieu of foreclosure. A deed in lieu of foreclosure is to deed the property prior to the foreclosure. It's in lieu of the foreclosure. It's prior to the foreclosure taking place. Now, that's just one way to save your credibility. Now, it may not save your home, but if you're dealing with a benevolent investor, it may be that he would want you to stay in that particular home. Since you know the home and since you may now have the ability to pay because of a fresh start, he may want you to stay in that property. And then later, once you get back on your feet, once your finances get back right, then you can probably enter back into a more conventional mortgage and a more conventional payment arrangement because your credit wasn't affected by a foreclosure.
Now, this investor that you're talking about, I guess this would be someone who has actually gone to the auction or to the sale and purchased that property. Is that what we're talking about?
Not necessarily, because those guys are, and we're going to talk about, what happens after that. Those guys are just in it for the quick buck. They're not in it to talk to you. They're not in it to, be good guys. What happens at a sheriff's sale is that once the property is sold, it is sold for whatever amount that the auction can get for it. Now, what that may create is two things. It creates a surplus or a shortage. If it's a shortage, meaning that I owe my mortgage company $50,000. At the sale, I only took in $48,000, where you're short $2,000 and they're coming after you for it.
Right.
Now you owe them $50,000 and the property sells for $75,000. Well, that $25,000 is yours.
Okay.
But no one's knocking on your door. There's no letters going out to alert you of this wonderful thing that just happened. Yes, I lost my property, but you have equity in that property that belongs to you.
Okay.
So all is not dead. All is not lost. But for some people who don't know, the money is still sitting there.
Gotcha. So that money is still sitting there. That's interesting. And now, will they need an attorney to help them through this process, or is this something that a homeowner can go down to the county courthouse or something and file on their own?
Yes, if a homeowner knows that the sale took place and that the property sold for more than what they owe the bank, then they know that there's a surplus. When they know that there's a surplus, then they can apply, at the county clerk's office for the return of those monies.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. So that in that way, it's not a total loss.
It's not a total loss.
That's interesting.
You see, but now to take for instance the person that, I don't want to lose my home at all. You see, I don't want to lose my home at all. So an investor such as myself comes along, or Dwayne Moore. There is another strategy that is used that called subject to the remaining debt. Now, subject to the remaining debt means that basically I'm paying off your old debt. only what you owe the bank, and then I'm getting the property for that amount of money. So I'm saving your credit, but I'm seizing the property. Now, however, you and I make an arrangement. Daniel, can I stay in the property once you purchase it from me? My answer to that question is probably absolutely.